If this winter could be over, that would be fantastic. From fixing wood boilers to now our roof leaking, this winter has required the most maintenance out of them all. So much snow, so many ice dams. It's gone a little overwhelming. If there isn't an ice dam, I don't know how we're gonna fix it. I also don't know how I'm getting on this trailer roof without falling off.
And if you're new here, I've winterized this trailer in order to be able to live in it nice and warm while I build my dream home and homestead from the ground up. But although we're warm, cozy, and housed, things can still go wrong, and it's my job to figure it out and get it fixed.
The leak is happening near here, which is interesting because there's not a lot of snow, like in that area. Maybe it's here? I don't know. I do not know where it could be leaking at this point. Oh, knock something down. Gosh, there's a lot of snow up here.
This isn't my first rodeo. We had a little leak in the trailer last winter as well, and it's definitely from ice dams. Removing the snow worked last year, so I'm hoping it'll work this year. I caught the leak really early, and I also have a dehumidifier running 24/7 in the trailer, which will help dry things up.
And the insulation to the gray and black water that goes to the pump chamber has fallen. What else is new? So hopefully it's not frozen because that insulation board keeps the heat in. Oh God, I knocked more insulation down. That wasn't supposed to happen. There's so much snow. Okay, we're not frozen. That is good. It must have recently fell. Gotta make sure the pump to the pump chamber works first because that's been frozen a few times this year because there's no daily consistent flow because we lock it up, unload every week or two. We're frozen. You can hear the motor humming, but nothing can be pumped. So I'll have to try on a warmer day next week. It's fine. I emptied it recently, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. And if I let some of the liquid in there, like the night before a warm day, it should thaw out pretty nicely. Just one of those things that's consistently going wrong. That wasn't supposed to happen. Well, this is broken and I need a new board. Fill it with some snow globs. And then we can hope it lasts until I can get something new. Oh, gosh.
It's the next day and the leaking has stopped. I think the ice dam was causing water to pool and either soak in or get maybe under a C unit area. But clearing that snow and ice seems to have been the solution, and we'll do further maintenance in the spring. Last week I left you off doing the taping for my home build, and I even got to the second coats on the flats and the butt joints.
And now it's time to do corners. Again, you have to do them one at a time. So I'm gonna start with the ceiling corners and the corners down here in the kitchen so that by the end of the day, I can do the other side of the corners.
I've done so much research on drywalling, and what I've learned is it's super important to get your mud on, get it consistent, and feather your edges.
Feather pass.
And then you can go back in with an even pressure pass, taking off a lot of the mud that you just put on.
And then a straight pass. And try not to mess up your flat joint that you just did.
I got a lot of comments about my corners on last week's video because I'm taking the time to do each side of the corner one at a time. A lot of people recommended to use the corner trowel, but a corner trowel can leave a lot of excess mud and sometimes can create an inconsistent edge, especially if the walls aren't perfectly straight, which mine aren't. With a knife, you can control the mud thickness better, you can feather the edges more cleanly, and you can avoid the buildup that a corner trowel can leave in the center.
It took me 5.5 days to get through the first box of mud. The next box of mud took me 2.5 days. So I'm on to my third now. I feel like this means I'm getting faster and more efficient. Maybe I'm using a bit more mud because the next coats seem to take on more mud, but it's coming along. Next up, I'm gonna get a coat on this off-angle corner here. Because there's this little piece of cardboard in here, you actually only have to fill like down. You don't have to fill all the way into the corner, which means I can do the top coat and the lower coat at once instead of having to wait for the corners to dry like these corners with the regular paper tape. I think this is just gonna be tricky depending on how I kind of like fudged the off angle in order to get that middle line straight as possible.
So basically across this 30-foot room, there's going to be little waves that come along, making this off angle slightly inconsistent. So moving the tape up or down to keep the center of it level all the way across is a great way to fix that, but then you're left with a little bit of inconsistencies for your mudding.
So I'm definitely noticing there's certain spots where I need to bring the knife all the way to this blue edge of the line, and other spots I only need to go right down to the very bottom, and it's depending on how I've had to lift or lower this off angle paper tape in order to get this wall looking straight all the way across and level all the way across. Give it the illusion of that even though it's not. So this top part here, you can see a lot more sunlight coming through, pretty much all the way down to here. So I'm having to fill this side a lot for now. It's probably gonna shift by the time we get to the other end. Actually, you know it shifts by the time I get to the other end. I'm gonna feather. Actually, I'll clean that up a bit first. I'll feather. And do a pass. So it's actually getting better over here. That's great. A little bit more even. Then I clean up this edge because I'm having to bring the mud so far down the corner. And then I can go in and fill this section, and because I have a corner bead, I'm pretty much filling it all the way. And I'll bring out my 10-inch knife. So this is the wonky corner that's been driving me nuts for weeks. It is out so much. That's probably 3/8 in a 6-inch span. I don't know. Like the wall is not out of level by that much. Actually, I should check it. It's just that like it somehow swoops in, and so I had to split the difference here, but I did buy a tool, a skimming tool, and I'm hoping this will help kind of level out the wall. It is actually quite at a plumb, so I think if I like do a nice skim coat of mud in here to try to fix it down to this line here, I think that'll really help. I'm just gonna work away at filling this because a lot of mud is required. I think this is going to require a decent amount of coats to get going. That's pretty good. Before I mess that up too much, I'm going to leave it. I think I'm going to try to fill more in here. When I started squeegeeing it down, it really took it out of the top here, which is the whole point of having it. Kind of fill in that top area. But there's a start. And I have to do the same thing on the other side. So that's where I'll start on the other side.
These mudding days go by so quickly, and it feels like I barely get anything done. And I still have other life things that I need to do on the side. So back to dealing with winter.
It's a new day. It's time for some more maintenance. The issue is it has snowed so much this year. I can't even get this out. Like it has not stop snowing. Should have brought a shovel over. There we go. Woo, we're full again. There we go. Wow. Oops. 2 buckets of ash this time for the gardens, and I think I need to do a little bit better at checking on the ashtray below. Last week was really cold, so I should have emptied this earlier. It's such a learning curve for me.
Let's talk wood boilers. Whenever I host a wood boiler video, I get a lot of frustrated comments saying I chose the wrong system and that I should never have gone with a wood boiler. For my home, I wanted in-floor heating because we have a floating slab. I wanted to reduce any heaving that might happen. This left me with a few options: a wood boiler, propane, electric, geothermal, or heat pumps. Propane would have cost $20,000 to install, plus you have to pay for the propane, which is around $2,000 to $3,000 for the average home per year in Canada. This means I would have paid off my wood boiler and my electric backup heating system in 3 to 5 years instead of going with propane. An electric boiler was about half the price up front than the propane boiler, but then you're paying really high costs in electricity fees. Both geothermal and heat pumps would probably require a secondary heating system like an electric backup or a propane backup because it gets too cold here. A standard heat pump often shuts down around -20, and a cold climate heat pump can work down to -25 or -30, but lose a lot of heating power and often need a backup system. And the upfront cost of geothermal is way out of our price range. And both geothermal and heat pumps would require a completely different design because they bring in a lot lower heat than a wood boiler does. So your tubing would need to be closer together and the tubing would need to be much larger. And going with a solar electric backup system and being completely off-grid with your heat not only is really hard to get a mortgage for and to insure, but is also insanely expensive up front.
The snow is officially starting to melt for now. Oh, it's been the most crazy winter. Do you see how much snow we have? This has been insane. I don't think I've ever seen a winter like this. This is like all compacted and it's very unsafe. It's already starting to collapse, but I need to remove this snow so that I can get to the rest of the wood. And so I've been waiting for a day to do just that. Get my axe out. Might need it, honestly. Birch bark. That's nice for relighting fires. Like, I just have to explain, this is like compacted. It's pretty well ice. This is crazy. So over it. Like, I don't even think it's possible to use a shovel at this point.
As you can tell, I regret not building a woodshed this year, but there were so many other priorities, like getting the home insulated in order to be able to work comfortably in there this winter and to obviously protect the floating slab foundation. I obviously didn't get the right type of tarps. These definitely let water through, which freezes, and then all the logs freeze and clump together. But I wonder if I went with those expensive or rubber tarps, if I would still be damaging them because of the amount of snow that's sitting on these piles right now.
There, we can access pile number 2 now. Oh gosh, this one's brutal.
When it comes to designing and building a woodshed, I truly have to keep it simple. Each woodshed can only be 160 square feet without having to have a permit. So that doesn't really leave room for the wood boiler to be inside of the shed. I would have to have a really large permitted building in order to have the wood boiler inside of the shed. And that's because I do not have a gasification unit. These newer gasification units can easily go into smaller buildings. The wood boiler that I have requires a lot more clearance. We're just going to go the simple route, at least have one 160 square foot woodshed, maybe 2. And obviously there's always the portable options, but that means requiring a tractor to be able to move them, like these portable sheds or totes to keep wood in. I don't think we're necessarily going to need a tractor in order to sustain the wood boiler and live on this land. I think we could easily get away with a UTV or an ATV to haul wood from the forest.
It's funny because this pile looks so small, and same with the other one, and they are much taller than they are. Like, see if I can fall through. There we go. Like, look at how small this pile looks. It's gotta be 2 feet below the snow at the bottom. I don't think I was taller than it in the fall. All right, I feel a lot better. I feel like that's gonna get us through the next month, maybe 3 weeks. And I may have to unbury a couple more piles near the spring, but hopefully it'll be easier then.
And now that that's done, I recently realized that our hot water tank isn't working and something is leaking and it is frozen. So I need to figure this out.
Okay. Oh gosh. How do I get out of that? Okay. The snow is up to our hips right now. This is not looking good. And dripping all the way down. And the sensor inside says it's not able to ignite. And this would be why. There must be a leak out of the hose here, and it slowly has been leaking out and freezing. So that's what happened here. I'm not like purposefully trying to neglect things. It's frustrating. Yikes. Oh, that's good. Whee! Like, what the heck? That doesn't do anything. Can it tighten? Ah! Wow. So yeah, it totally leaks. When did that even happen? Okay, hopefully it stops leaking because it wasn't before I pressed it. All right. Just might need a hammer. It looks good to go. I mean, this is still slowly leaking, which sucks. And I'm not getting a replacement part for it today, but the next few days are warm. I gotta do some research on that one, but let's see if I can fire it on. All right, the moment of truth. Let's see if this red light can go away. Maybe I'll come back in a bit and see if it fires up. It went away. It's firing up. Just kidding. It's flicking on and off. So I don't know. I'm gonna leave it for a bit. Is it too wet? I don't know what to say anymore. Last task of the day. Let's see if it has thawed in the pump chamber to see if I can empty the black and gray tank for the septic. It's like a humming noise. She's still frozen. Okay, I'm gonna add some of the gray and black tank to it because the next 2 days are warm, so adding stuff should help it melt. Oh, I hope nothing else is frozen. Okay, we'll try again tomorrow. It is nuts out. I think it's time to work inside now. Do I mud today too? What do I do with myself? I hate starting work halfway through a day. So I'm gonna finish off the second coat on my corners, around my bulkheads, any places I need to fill still, where there's corner bead. At least get 3 hours in since my morning was dealing with winter.
Deciding whether or not I was going to hire out the mudding for my home build was such a difficult decision to me. I went back and forth so often, and what it came down to was a belief that I could do it and do a decent job at it, which may be naive thinking since it's quite the skill. But it also came down to finances and trying to spread out our budget a little bit until I can get a little bit more financing. I do have to do my taxes and apply for a little bit more financing for the home build. So this was honestly the perfect opportunity for me to try a new skill. And I'm not gonna lie, the amount of you who told me not to do the mudding and that I was gonna not be good at it completely fueled me to become the best DIY mudder out there. So if you tried to use reverse psychology on me, it worked. This is your fault. But also thank you for those who believed in me because I'm actually really enjoying mudding.
Here's a chore that you might not think about when it comes to living in the trailer and building the home. We need water for our trailer in order to function. And this needs to be done every 3 days. And I really twisted this. There we go. Oh, and by the way, the hot water tank is working. I think those little bits of ice just needed to melt off a bit more from any of the elements that we're trying to light. Oh my gosh, we're having a severe melt kind of finally. So I'm hoping that this works now. Yay! Yay! It's been a few days since I've actually been mudding, so we're gonna get back at it. I need to do the second coat on the cathedral ceiling. Hopefully, I remember talking about that little bulge that was happening on the ceiling. I don't know if I'm just seeing it because there's a lot more light in here, but fingers crossed, the second coat covers that right up.
I ended up reaching out to the Vancouver carpenter about this bulge in the mud on this vaulted ceiling, and he did say that sometimes you have to take a look at the bevel, and if it's really pronounced, you might have to pre-fill in order for that bulge not to happen. That way there's less mud and the gravity doesn't pull that mud down, creating the bulge. Now at this point it's too late, but the second coat seems to be covering it.
We do have some paper showing through in some spots. Like right here, there's a bit of paper showing through. It has a bit of mud on it, but we're getting sunlight through. Most spots are pretty good for that third and final coat.
If you're looking for more drywalling tips, I highly recommend checking out the Vancouver Carpenter and the Drywall Shorties YouTube channels. They are phenomenal teachers and super kind. And just like that, my second coats are pretty much done. On to the third and final coat and on to priming and painting the house. I cannot wait for the next steps. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. A little bit different with having to deal with this winter chaos we've had, from snow being up to our hips, the wood boiler breaking down, the hot water tank breaking down, ice dams and leaks. It's been chaotic, to say the least. Thank you for your support. I'm getting there. You are awesome. Be sure to smash the like button, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next week.